What is intuition? How is it that we can define it? And what does it all really mean? In today's video, we're going to jump into some of these interesting topics and find a little bit more about how we can readily and steadily access our intuitive talents. Let's get into it. Welcome back, adepts and initiates, to day 4 of Applied Intuition. Today we're going to be jumping into the conversation about what intuition is, going a little bit deeper in terms of the levels of mind and how it all ties together. Before we do though, go ahead and click that subscribe button so that you can stay in constant contact with all of the great content coming out on this channel. Now, have you ever had one of those moments where you just knew that you knew something? Whether it was a matter of turning left rather than turning right, whether it was a matter of calling a friend who you hadn't thought of in years. And when you acted upon that impulse, that intuition, if you will, what were the results of that? Well, one of the things that I have this weird kind of knack for is knowing what to bring in the course of my day. So as I head out the door, if it's in the morning with the boys or if I'm heading out on my own, one of the things that I often do is I pause and I think and ask, do I have everything that I need for today? Now, my dad brain has all the lists of all the things. We're going to the park, so I need the ball, the water bottles, so on and so forth. However, this is not that. In fact, just the other day, I was pausing just before heading out the door. I took my moment and asked, do I have everything that I need for today? And the sensation was no. So when I have those moments, I take a moment and I close my eyes and I breathe and I ask myself, what is it that I need today? And inevitably something happens, a sense, a visual, a feeling. Just the other day, it was duct tape. Now, I'm heading to the park with the boys and we're going to go and play. And so we've got all of our toys and so on and so forth ready to go. That pops into my field. And so I go and I grab the duct tape, having no idea what I'm going to need duct tape for. I'm like, is it an injury? Is it for one of the balls? I had no idea. In any case, I bring the duct tape with me. We head out the door and we go to the park. Now, at the park, we're playing, and as we do, the boys will play on the playground off. I'll often just sit on the side playing my ukulele, just taking some time to relax if I'm not playing with them or, working out. And so this was one of those days. I'm sitting on the side playing my ukulele, and all of a sudden I see a mother and her 2 children, and they're getting up to leave, and the bag that she is carrying stuff in tears a little bit. So it tears a little bit, and stuff starts to pop out. And so all of a sudden it clicks. I have duct tape. This is what it's for. And so I bring the duct tape over and I'm like, oh, hold on. I have some duct tape. Would that help? Because it was like one of those, tote bags, Target or whatever it was. And so I go ahead and I tape it on because they're in the process of leaving. I tape it on and I secure that tear. And all of a sudden, for the time being at least, it'll make it from where we were at the park back to her car. Now, there's no way that with the information that I had at that moment that I would have been able to predict that I would need duct tape because of this incident and to be able to use it in this event. Not at all, right? And so as we talk about intuition, this being a very, simple case, there are much bigger and more relevant things that can happen. However, this simple case is a perfect example of what intuition is. And I would say for our intent and purposes, as we talk about today, what is intuition? For our intent and purposes, I'm going to say our working definition for the next 20 days is going to be this. Intuition is the ability to perceive beyond physical input. The ability to perceive Let's look at that part first. So we're saying, first and foremost, that there is an ability. This is a capacity that each and every one of us has, right? Although it can be a little bit different in terms of what that power is, what that potentiality is, it is an ability nonetheless that each and every one of us has. To perceive. Perceive is more than just seeing. Often when we talk about perception, we're talking about what it is that we use our 5 primary physical talents for. Our physical ability to be able to look at, to sense, to hear, to taste, to touch, right? Those 5 physical senses is generally how we look at perception. So the ability, this is the capacity that each and every one of us has to be able to tune in, use our faculties to then take in beyond physical input. So we're no longer talking then about merely the 5 physical senses of sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. Indeed, we're going beyond that. So we're going effectively beyond physicality, physical input. Now, if you look at input, all our sensory organs really do is they are specific to taking in data, information, things of that nature. And so what we're looking at in terms of a working definition for us in terms of what is intuition, well, it is the ability to perceive beyond physical input, our capacity to take in information and data beyond our 5 physical senses. Now, one of the things about that as we go deeper with this experience is we're going to find one of the universal laws. Often talk about this in the concept of quantum physics, is the idea of correspondence. As above, so below, as within, so without, right? There is a relationship, a connection between what it is that we can see and what it is that is beyond what we can perceive. In this case, when we talk about our faculties for physical perception, we also have faculties for metaphysical perception. Now, we'll talk a lot more about that tomorrow. Today, let's use this from here on out as our working definition for applied intuition, because what it's going to go further and deeper into is what is called the levels of mind, or the trinity of consciousness. Now, the trinity of consciousness is a great place to focus our attention on, because we're going to look at the 3 levels of mind: our conscious, our subconscious, and superconscious mind. Now, in some representations of intuition, if you look at Malcolm Gladwell's concept via blink, right? It looks at the subconscious mind's ability to process vast amount of data, in this case, physical input, and be able to come up with split-second decisions. Something like 1 to 3 seconds of processing, even though our conscious mind, what we know that we know, doesn't necessarily access all of that information. And as we look at the subconscious mind, it's more of the stuff that we know that we don't know, and the stuff that we don't know that we know, if that makes sense, right? Kind of think of Sigmund Freud. He talked about a glacier, right? And that what we see above the water is sort of that conscious mind, maybe like 10% of what it is that we know. Let's say that's something kind of like a pocket calculator, right? It has certain capabilities, yet it's ultimately somewhat limited. Now, the remaining 90% of that iceberg or that glacier is held underwater. Now, that's going to be more of our subconscious mind, right? That's the area that has more depth and ultimately more breadth to it. It's the totality of our beliefs and the concepts and emotions and memories. Now, when we look at that in comparison is a pretty big difference, and it's a matter of magnitude. Well, as we talk about the superconscious mind, more of that infinite intelligence that exists, that is where we're really focusing on our intuition. Yes, absolutely, there are things in terms of what that subconscious mind is able to process and to comprehend, we're not necessarily talking about that. What we're talking about in and with applied intuition are those abilities that exist beyond physicality and into the lion's share of what really is. And so with the trinity of consciousness, the conscious mind, subconscious mind, and superconscious mind, our attention is really going to be focusing upon those aspects of the latent abilities held within the superconscious mind. Now, that's a really interesting thing that we're going to be exploring, because as we look at this, whether we're talking about governmental agencies looking at leveraging things like remote viewing as sort of information wars, or looking at things in terms of how we can just simply connect as people via empathic connections. The abilities that we have are effectively held within ourselves, and once activated, can actually be integrated within the very cells of our body. And so it gets to be really, really exciting, because as we look at what intuition is, it really is our birthright. It is something that each and every one of us has the ability, the built-in capacity to access. One of the main differentiating characteristics comes back to culture. In terms of like Western culture versus more indigenous cultures perception, looking at sort of that aspect of East and West, the Western world hasn't fully embraced. It's kind of coming up now, though there are ways that it gets distorted. And so what we're really going to be looking at is having common language around what it is, exploring this further in terms of the trinity of consciousness, and being able to identify in tomorrow's video how this actually works. We're actually going to go into the pathways of intuition and how the 4 primary intuitive types actually has and ascertains those levels of information. Ooh, I'm excited. Are you? All right. For today, though, let's bring this to an end. Thank you for joining. Love and aloha. Take care, and ahui ho.